Book Review: Fathers of Nations by Paul B. Vita. Fathers of Nations is the current compulsory novel studied by Current Form 3 and will be first tested this year, 2024, in Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education, KCSE. I recommend to every teacher, student, and literature enthusiast that before you dig into reading book guides, consider reading the text itself in totality. This review is detailed to make it quick to grab the storyline and major concerns raised in the text, characters, language, and style. However, reading the text with a sense of ownership, confidence, and enthusiasm will enlighten your comprehension of this masterpiece. Synopsis: the story revolves around the lives of four men from different parts of Africa. They are Professor Kimani, Comrade Malusi, Engineer Tahir, and Pastor Chiamaka. All of them have either had ruthless encounters with their governments, injustices imposed on them, or economic jeopardy. They want African heads of state at the summit to ratify and adopt the document that could transform the continent's economic structures. They are all checked in at the Seamount Hotel, Banjul, in different wings and floors. They don't know each other except for their guide, who knows them all. They have suffered initially in different ways under the current political systems in their respective countries. This is a motivation against their respective governments, hence the urge to press for possible changes. Dr. Afolabi Abiola is abandoned by his American wife, Pamela. Professor Kimani from Kenya has lost his wife, Adio Amandi, to newborn Walomu, a former university colleague who is now a politician. His daughter Tuni dies in a fatal accident. Pastor Chiamaka is a fierce man who is jailed for his outspokenness against the government. He is deterred from preaching too. Comrade Ngobele Malusi, once a big-time politician, suffers at the hands of the new head of state, loses his wife Zaliza in a massacre, and his Ndebele people are ruthlessly suppressed and murdered by the head of state's direct order. In addition to the four men, Engineer Seif Tahir, a nuclear bomb expert, and Mr. Thaddeus Longway are also dissatisfied with the African leadership. They are assisted by the VOA journalist Fiona McKenzie and Nicholas Sentinel, who in one accord plan to front their agenda contained in a rival document, Path Alpha, against Way Omega, before the heads of the summit held in Gambia's capital of Banjul. 50 heads of state invited to Banjul, capital of Gambia, are expected to assemble and get accommodation in the Pinnacle Hotel with their entourage. Their mission is to adopt the Way Omega ideology, which advocates for a common growth strategy of the citizens that will enable the donors to continue supporting the African nations through aid and grants. The ideology is fronted by Minister Zinto, who claims that the strategy was well thought out by experts. Most heads of African states seem to be aged and have overstayed in power. Led by President Didier Bangura, who is depicted as senior, Debo Dibonso, who had ruled for 40 years, King Jemba IV, a king for life, and President Wasi Wasi, who has committed all sorts of atrocities, including authoring many coups. Many African countries are led by dictators, old leaders, or poor political systems. Path Alpha, a counter-ideology emanating from AGDA, Agency for Governance and Development in Africa, championed by Mr. Tad Longway, finds its way into the summit and is engaged by the heads of state. From the onset of the story, Mr. Longway mobilizes the lines of Professor Kimani, Comrade Malusi, Pastor Chiamaka, Dr. Afolabi, and Engineer Tahir to use the trick to table the ideology before the summit to counter the Way Omega. Path Alpha, as a strategy, advocates for minimizing civic or public discounted into the will to change. This strategy is to solve the problems some present heads of state find difficult to solve. The advocators of Path Alpha champion the strategy because they want to solve the problems and owing to the fact that they have also suffered the ugly state abuse and do not want to suffer anymore. The summit comes to a close in an unprecedented way, whence the Fathers of Nations set up a committee to bring the long debate of adopting Way Omega or Path Alpha to a conclusion. The committee is set and named Method Committee and is chaired by President Bangura. The president seems to be terribly confused because of senility. He uses two ways to decide on which strategy to be ratified: the simple matrix by a toss of a coin and choice matrix. Ultimately, Dr. Afolabi, Mr. Zinto, and the summit chair confirm as witnesses an exercise that sees the Path Alpha strategy carry the day. Denotatively, the win of Path Alpha is a sign of victory to the ordinary citizen.